Hello, I'm Winslow Elliott, and here's a brief history of tarot. The tarot is really a combination of two card decks representing archetypal symbols and images. The major cards tell the story of the fool's journey through life, and the minor ones are like our regular playing cards, with the addition of one extra court card. The earliest playing cards that we know of found their way to Europe around 1375 or so. Most likely came from China along the Silk Route, but as we'll see later on, the symbols and imagery that were hidden in the cards, they originated way earlier. It's possible that the cards were used to disguise ancient esoteric teachings, and possibly they were kept alive by being hidden in plain sight in games. The first deck of trump cards showed up in Germany, and the first tarot deck we know about, which was the combined playing cards with the trump cards, appeared around 1440 in northern Italy. And the images on the trumps themselves include medieval and religious imagery, social structures, ideals that could be traced to artists, pageants, morality plays, and often include Plato's four cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and courage. People loved playing with tarot. In the games, the trumps or the trick cards were used to win over the minor cards, and also, as far back as we know, the cards were used for divination right from the beginning. The games became increasingly defined and actual rules were published. The Marseille deck was originally printed from a woodcut, and the cards were later colored either by hand or by the use of stencils. And because of this, it was fairly simple for them to be reproduced. But it's still amazing to me to know that over 1 million tarot decks were produced in France during the 1700s. The tarot decks kept the Italian names for the four suits, which we have to this day: wands, swords, cups, and coins, with some variations in that. But the regular playing cards adopted the French suit signs, which we still use to this day: clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds. Eteia was the first person to begin to uncover and publish the mysteries that were hidden in the tarot. His real name was Jean-Baptiste Aliette, and he renamed himself Eteia, which was his last name spelled backward. And he created his own tarot deck, the Grande Eteia, which included astrological correspondences that he discovered, and also ascribed the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet to the 22 major arcana trump cards. Cour de Gabelin, he claimed that it was his discovery that the tarot was an ancient Egyptian book of arcane wisdom. There was quite a bit of rivalry between him and Eteia about this. Cour de Gabelin's real name was Antoine Cour, but he took his grandmother's name, possibly because he appreciated her clairvoyant abilities. That's one legend about why he took her name. And in the mid-19th century, new systems of correspondence continued to be unveiled and interpreted. And this was a time when spiritualism and occultism was exploding in the United States as well as in Europe. Eliphas Lévy, born Alphonse Louis Constant, was a French occult author and magician, and his name, Eliphas Lévy, was an attempt to transliterate his given names of Alphonse Louis into the Hebrew language. He wrote a book called Principles and Rituals of High Magic, and in it he set the tone for the occult tarot. And by occult, I mean the supernatural, mystical, magical secrets that underlie symbols and imagery. Papus published one of the most famous of all tarot books. In fact, it's still in print. It's called The Tarot of the Bohemians, the most ancient book in the world for the exclusive use of initiates. And in this book he claimed that tarot preserves ancient wisdom by way of the gypsies, who go all the way back to Egypt, India, and even Atlantis. And then in the late 1800s, an Englishman came across a strange manuscript, and since it was written in code, he called it the cipher manuscript. We don't know how he got it, but he and two friends spent several years trying to decipher it, and when they finally sorted out what it all meant, they realized its significance, especially with regard to the ancient wisdom hidden in the tarot. And they immediately founded a secret order called the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. They created their own deck based on the teachings in the cipher manuscript. And the secret order had several levels of initiation. Only a very few people were allowed to be in the inner circle. And eventually, of course, this caused a lot of jealousy and hurt. But many important tarotists did become members of the order, even if it were only for a short amount of time. One of them was Paul Foster Case. After he left the Golden Dawn, he became involved in various Masonic lodges until he founded his own school called the Builders of the Adaitum, which is still going strong, based out of Los Angeles. He authored several books on tarot, and in particular the tarot's connection with the Kabbalah. And Aleister Crowley was a controversial figure, also split off from the Golden Dawn to found his own religion, which he called Thelema, based on a being he claimed he channeled. Crowley is controversial not just because he's a bit of a nut, but also because some people feel he didn't really use his esoteric knowledge as wisely and maybe as selflessly as he could have. But for some reason his deck is still one of the most popular tarot decks even today. And then Arthur Edward Waite, who was one of the first to shift the tarot out of the secret and exclusive occultism that it had fallen into a more accessible path of universal archetypes and a path to self-knowledge. He and the artist Pamela Coleman Smith created pictures, even on the pip cards, to help tarot readers use their intuitive skills to interpret a card, rather than relying on academic knowledge of what a card was supposed to signify. And during the last century, Waite's deck became a model for hundreds of derivative decks. Increasingly, a reader's own intuition was trusted to reveal universal archetypes. Jung didn't actually use tarot cards in his many practices, as far as we know, but he understood how they might work for divination purposes. In a way, working with tarot is similar to working with dreams, where you go inward to understand what the imagery might mean. Nowadays, there are all sorts of decks available: animals, goddesses, angels, ancestors, sacred places. There's a tarot of love, an alchemical tarot, astrological tarot decks, countless themes, and more are created every day. And that is my brief history of the tarot. It's used in many ways nowadays, and I hope that you explore your own way in the future. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And if you'd like to find out more about me, please go to my website, winslowelliott.com, and visit the School of Clairvoyant Arts under Metaphysics. I look forward to seeing you there. Sending love and light.